Thank you everyone for joining us for today's MRO Best Practices with Ricky and Radar. We are so excited to present today's webinar. It is brought to you by the maintenance community. So if you haven't already joined us, here is the link in the chat. Please feel free to sign up. Ricky and Radar are both active experts, always answering questions. We even have an MRO channel, so a dedicated channel to talk everything about storerooms and MRO. So please feel free to sign up and join us. A little bit of housekeeping. So if you hover your mouse over where the presentation is, you'll see a button that says chat. That's where you can type any questions throughout this presentation, and we will save about 10 to 15 minutes at the end to try and answer as many as we can. Any that we can't get to, we'll add into the Slack channel to answer at a later date in Slack. So without further ado, I'd love to turn it over to Ricky and Radar.
Go ahead, Ricky.
Hey, Radar, introduce yourself and tell everybody about what your experience is with MRO.
Okay, will do. My name is Donald Radar Huntsinger. I've been in the business going on almost 40 years now. I hate to say that, but that's true. I am a Lean Six Sigma black belt. I am a CMRP. I am currently the corporate manager for MRO. I have 8 facilities, one of them being the largest cheese packaging facility in the United States. We have a very large maintenance program. I have currently 114 lines that I am responsible for maintenance, reliability, as well as procurement of all indirect goods and services. My experience, I've worked with Ricky in the past. We actually worked with the same company years ago. I've worked with some of the largest corporations in the world, including Textron Aerospace. I was a lean manufacturing coordinator back in the 90s for Textron, worked for PepsiCo, worked for Nestle, but I've been with Great Lakes Cheese for 6 years. It was a really good opportunity to come on board because they were completely reactive. They were 95% reactive. And over the past 6 years, we have turned that around to be right around the 10 to 15% reactive. The storerooms did not have any standardization across the board. So over the past 6 years, we've worked on all the standardization and the best practices that Ricky will present here on the slides coming. That's basically, I'm also a maintenance repair operational material management certified trainer. Ricky, I have so many, let's just go ahead and move on. Okay, I could go on for hours. So.
All right, Radar, thank you.
Yeah,
I'm Ricky Smith. I've been in the maintenance and reliability field since 1972, so it's been a long time. Started as a technician, became a supervisor, ultimately a maintenance manager, and then maintenance engineer, before they had reliability engineers. Worked for a company called Alcoa Mount Holly and a world-class plant. That's where I learned a lot of the proactive approaches. The Army had it in 1972, went to U.S. Army as maintenance, but I was working rebuild, so rebuild on heavy equipment like bulldozers and front-end loaders and stuff like that. But really I learned it at Mount Holly, planning, scheduling, all those things that have to be done. You can Google it, look up Alcoa Mount Holly, just Google it, world-class maintenance. There's a lot of literature written on that plant, and it can help you a lot. So today, MRO best practices. Let's move on. So, maintenance storeroom. What's the objective? So the objective of the maintenance storeroom, to manage the parts and material, inventory investment. It is an investment, and provide the needed parts and components for equipment repairs and support the objectives and goals of the organization. Without a maintenance storeroom that's effective, it will be a catastrophic failure in an organization. And in fact, most places with maintenance storerooms, they're a train wreck, and it shows in their profit and loss. So what were therefore the objective? To optimize and manage total cost, to provide the right part or material at the right time in a proactive environment, the right part or material at the right time. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen the Ishikawa diagram, fishbone diagram. I use it quite a bit because a great way to understand the causal and effect diagram helps you manage, track down the reasons for, to me, it's imperfections, variations that you're having in the process or failures. So it looks like a fish At the end is the results. So talk about this. We look at measurements. So in the maintenance storeroom, some of the issues we could have is stock outs, parts cost, vendor efficiency. So what if a vendor says they're going to be there at 7 o'clock Monday morning with the part, and you got your maintenance guys standing there waiting on it, and they don't show up at 7 o'clock? That's a problem. So vendor efficiency to me, I created this metric. It's the percentage of time a vendor delivers on time with the right part and the right quantity. Multiply those three together, that's vendor efficiency. And I'll tell you what, it works well. Then materials, right materials, right lubricants, and the right part. Personnel, all processes mapped and executed with discipline. If we don't have a process map on how we manage the storeroom, how does everybody get in alignment? And I think it's important to have that. Everyone trains a specific task. So everyone's trained specifically the same way. Now, Radar, do you do that with your organization?
Yes, we do, Ricky. And not only do we map it out, but we go and print it on a blotter printer, a plotter
Yeah.
printer, and post it in the storeroom so everyone understands, especially if we have multiple shifts, because each shift has different um, items that they have to attend to. Like first shift may be doing receiving, while second or third shift may be doing cycle counting. But the good thing about it is everyone understands what the process is, and it's a red, yellow, green light process. So um, if there's a reactive work order that comes in, if one of our storeroom personnel are working on something green, is what we call like cycle counting, they stop what they're doing and then go to the red light. So yes, Ricky, to answer your question,
Awesome.
we have that posted.
And the next one, roles and responsibilities defined using racing. Your roles and responsibilities defined very well, Radar?
Yes, sir. And that was one of the key items that we implemented at Great Lakes Cheese. They didn't have a RACI chart for who is responsible, accountable, consulted, or informed, and that's what RACI stands for. And it really it shed some light on some people that were confused about what their role was. So when you do that and you document and you have that posted, it makes it a clear separation of duties.
Absolutely. Yeah, every place I've been into has been reactive. They got very unclear who's responsible for what, who's accountable for what, who's going to be consulted. It's like, it's not my problem. Okay. All right. I got you. All right. So the next one, environment, the humidity could be a problem on certain parts. Absolutely. If it's not stored to specifications, like if we got large bearings, if they're not stored in a horizontal position, talking about laying flat on a vibration pad, we're going to have a problem. If they're not secure, people can walk in and walk out of a storeroom and take apart. Probably no one here has that problem. Okay. No one listening to this webinar has that problem with unsecured storeroom. I tell you what, this is one that drives me crazy. What? I mean, we got card key readers, we got barcode scanning. And
We
what
have
I like to do,
we have RFID that you could put on your parts. There's all
yeah.
kinds of new
Oh, yeah,
technology.
that's amazing. I've gone to a lot of storerooms that are unsecure. People just walk in and take what they want because we trust them. I don't care about the trust. That's not the problem. The problem is they take a part, they don't check it out. Now we run out of stock and we don't know where it went. So now we got to expedite a part in, like I had to one time. I needed a hydraulic pump and I had to have it flown in from Germany. And that was before we had FedEx overnight and UPS. So I had to buy it a seat. They wouldn't let me buy a seat on a Delta flight. So I had to buy all first class. I got their attention when I said that because we were losing thousands of dollars an hour. I had to have that pump, but it taught me a lot.
And Ricky, to this point,
Next, go ahead.
before we go any further, when we don't have the right part, or let's say that someone took a part out of inventory and they placed it on a piece of equipment or asset and they didn't check it out and they entered it into a work order. Now we don't have the trackability of the expenditures of that asset. So at the end of the year, when we're doing a stratification on expenditures of an asset, that part will not be added on to that expenditure. So you don't have a clear, concise bottom line of what you spent in parts and labor when you don't issue it to a work order. So it actually has a catastrophic effect down the line as well.
Absolutely. And the other thing is, if you have to do root cause analysis, on an asset because of a problem. If you don't have that data, it's like you're lost.
Mhm.
Great point. So the next one, though, methods, we need to have procedures. Everybody does everything the same way every time. And what I used to call is a task qualification. So when someone now is a junior, coming in, I don't mean junior as far as age, but they're new to the storeroom. What I expect them to do is that at some point, as senior, whoever is going to be one training them, says at some point they're task qualified. Now, some people have checklists and so on that verify it, but some is, at least if I want my best person in the storeroom to train that individual. But I like checklists that you check them off and say they're task qualified. And then the KPI dashboards, I need dashboards. I need metrics to tell me how well we're doing in our storeroom and our purchasing and so on. Assets, operate the specification, maintain the specification. We can't do it without the right parts and material. So some inventory performance indicators, item turnover rate, is it increasing or decreasing? Just a trend. What's it doing? Now, Radar, how do you track turnover rate?
Okay, so this is a really good one to discuss briefly, and the reason why that is to answer your question, Ricky. We track turnover rate based on our inventory level. What's the issuance? And I do this every month. I have meetings with each one of our storerooms, maintenance managers, and plant managers, depending on the level of the presentation that I give. And it shows if we have a specific part that is increasing turnover rate, that starts to show some failures at a particular asset.
That's
So
right.
then we can communicate, and this is why the MRO storeroom is so very important. They see things going in and out of the storeroom, and a lot of times it's overlooked by maintenance supervisors, maintenance technicians, especially in huge plants that have multiple sections and lines. But the storeroom is like a centralized area, and if you have really qualified storeroom people, then they can communicate to your maintenance planners or supervisors if you don't have planners, saying, hey, I'm noticing this widget. We're increasing our purchasing, we're increasing our issuance, because not only do the storeroom people have to reset the reorder point in reorder quantity, but you have to ask the question of why you're doing that. That's why the turnover rate is so very important, because what I've seen in the past, Ricky, storerooms will just increase, or somebody will tell them,
Yeah,
hey, order six.
that's
You only
right.
use one, but let's order six. And then you have five sitting in the drawer for
That's
years.
right. You never know. We might need the other five, you know.
Yeah.
It's incredible how we get so many parts and no one figured out what the problem is. You know, stock outs less than 5%. So service level stock out is the part's supposed to be in the storeroom, says it on the computer. I go there, it's not there. And we can say it more than that. I mean, we can tell you to the next level, and that is if it's not supposed to go out of stock because we got reserve stock, then if it goes to through that reserve, we got a stock out.
Hmm.
But to me is if you go there and the part's not there, but the computer says it's in there, it's a stock out. What about you, Radar?
Absolutely. That's a correct definition. And that's really important KPI to track, because that lets you know if your storeroom is out of control as far as security is concerned. And stockouts is one of the very first items that you want to start looking at.
I was at a plant working, helping them on everything in their plant, and they put up cameras in their plant. They just put them up, okay, security cameras, and the storeroom was one of them. And it was amazing. The next one morning I come in and the maintenance manager said, Ricky, you got to see this video. And there was a guy that come in, they're showing the video, it was like late at night. He runs up to the storeroom and he looks around and he opens the gate because it wasn't locked, okay? He walks into the store and picks up a part, looks at it, it was a fastener. So it was just a big bolt. He just holds it up and looks at it, gives thumbs up and runs out the door. And the funny thing about it, he was just, I forgot to tell you, he had a mask on too. He had like a sock pulled over his head with eyes, so nobody could figure out who he was. I thought that was funny. He was making a mockery of the process. Inventory accuracy, that's back to the service level. We want to make sure that we're above 95%.
Hey,
percentage of,
Ricky, but I'm sorry to stop you, but inventory accuracy is really important here. I got to tell you a quick story to everyone, okay? I had a storeroom, and mind you, I've done storerooms all over the world for different companies, whether it's mining, manufacturing, food, pharmaceutical. I've done them all over. But there was this one storeroom. I'll never forget it, Ricky. Um, they said they did cycle counting and everything, and I said, "Oh, okay. Well, your inventory accuracy is like 60%." So what I had done is I saw the next items that were coming up the following day to cycle count, and I put a $20 bill in where that item was at. Okay, I took the item out, but I put a $20 bill in there, and I wanted to see if the storeroom were actually doing the cycle counts, which they weren't.
yeah,
And I walked up the following day and I asked them about the cycle counting. They said, "Oh yeah, we did it. Our accuracy is perfect, right?" And I said, "Oh, let's go up and take a look." I said, "See, if you'd have done your cycle count, you'd have seen that there was a $20 bill in there for you." But anyway,
that's right. That's right. That's pretty good. I've never heard of that before. So the percentage of parts assigned to an asset or assets, I mean, all parts should be assigned to an asset unless they're free bin, free stock. The number of expedited parts. I want to know how many times these parts are expedited. And I have to tell you, yeah, the next one, emergency purchases plus overnight delivery or expedited costs. I like to know that cost. That cost, I'll tell you what, this is crippling to a lot of organizations. It tells you a lot. If you just look at the data tells you a lot.
mhm.
Probably nobody on this call has seen this before. Okay. Pack orders, less than 5%. We have to keep it low. That means our vendors have to be in tune with us and they had to be aligned with us. They had to make sure they're going to deliver on time. If they don't, then we're going to look for another vendor. Should be a contract with them, not to be certain requirements on that. I'm sure you've gotten radar.
Yes, sir. And that's the most important thing is to have um, preferred suppliers under contracts. That way, most suppliers, once you do sign a contract with them, they're more apt to store things on their shelf, especially during lean times. A lot of companies don't want to have excess inventory, just like we don't want to have
Yeah.
excess inventory. But you can share the cost, and a lot of times they will inventory about 20% of your big ticket items that you purchase from them.
Yeah. That saves you a lot of money. That
Reduces
you might
lead
people
times.
don't think about it, but once it goes in your inventory, in the US, you pay taxes on it. In Canada, you pay taxes on it,
Mhm.
on that inventory. We don't want to get into that inventory taxing if we can. Vendor efficiency, yep. Percentage of on-time delivery, the right quantity percentage times the right part, 98% plus.
I would like everyone to think, have you ever gone to your vendor's place and did an audit? We do
Ooh.
internal audits
Ooh.
with our top 5 vendors that are under preferred contracts. We set it up and things like that, but we actually go and see their operation and see how they do things. And sometimes we can help them help us. So
Yeah,
think about doing vendor audits as well.
yeah, and all kinds of vendors. I mean, I know when I was working with Cargill once, and they had a motor rebuild shops. They had a survey. They went out and did it, and it was on demand. So in other words, they didn't call them and say, "Hey, we're coming." They just show up at their office because that was their contract. So they go in and they had like 100 different identifiers. They went through that rebuild shop, check, 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 check. So it wasn't like they were waiting on them to come. So, and if you didn't get above a 98%, then you got 30 days to rectify it, or they're going to find another supplier. In fact, they're
Mhm,
probably already looking for a supplier when they did that.
mhm.
Vendor owned inventory, less than 5%. I don't like a lot of inventory owned by the vendor. I don't like that. Not a lot. Some it's okay. So what does a good storeroom look like? Clean and organized. Right part at the right time. Parts are stored to best practices. So like V belts, they're not hanging on a loop. I know this may surprise people, but when you hang them on a long loop and they're hanging down, that weight on them will cause it to fail prematurely.
Also, being under fluorescent lights and the ozone that's out and V belts or any kind of rubber materials deteriorate faster. than if you store them properly. So a lot of people do have the dust contaminants, the ozone contaminants, as the ultraviolet lights or fluorescent lights, I should say,
Yeah,
that are above you. If your belts are sitting under fluorescent lights, you are deteriorating them faster.
yeah. And they fail prematurely, but they're going to fail prematurely more often now.
Hmm.
Good luck with it. Storeroom secure 24/7. I like a card key in and out with an alarm if the door is not closed. So you go in, you lock the door, you close the door behind yourself. That way you don't have vagrants kind of showing up. Because otherwise, I don't know what you guys work at, what kind of plants, but you'll have vagrants that'll stand outside the storeroom and wait for somebody to go get a part, and then they'll go in so they don't have to write a work order for the part. They're not stealing anything. They're just trying to bypass the system. I don't want that. Parts are charged to an asset of work order. Parts must be charged to an asset or a work order. A lot of times they'll have a blanket work order. Blanket work orders don't work. Where did the part go? I mean, if we got reliability people, maintenance people, we want to know where that part went. So cycle counting, you know, it's a popular inventory counting solution that allows businesses to count those several items in several areas within the warehouse without having to count the entire inventory. Otherwise, you're not going and taking all of them. It's just a sampling. Cycle counting is a sampling techniques where the count of a certain number of items infers the count of the whole warehouse. So sampling a few tells you what the rest of it looks like.
This also helps instead of doing a full year-end inventory. When you do the cycle counting, let's say you have 6,000 line items in your system, you only have to count about 16 items a day, every day for 365 years, so, or 365 days. So at the end of the year, all items have been counted. And Ricky's going to get to the ABC later, but we'll cycle counting. If you just divide whatever the number you have in your total inventory by 365 or 340 if there's vacations or whatever you want, and it tells you how many items you have to count per day.
That's a great point. Adequate conditioned air for specific, assets, components that you have in the storeroom. Large horsepower motors, 50 horsepower or larger, shafts that turn 1.25 turns, every month because you got vibration on the floor. When working with Cargill, that's what they did. They go out and check the vibration on the floor and in the plants that are actually making the motors too, to make sure when they come off that production line, they don't sit on a production floor or sit in a warehouse sitting there going like this.
On this, Ricky, I do storeroom preventative maintenance tests that are generated out. So our storeroom people who manage the inventory actually get a PM, just like if they were a maintenance tech, to go out and turn motors,
That's,
shafts.
that's the best person to do it, rather than send a technician's time in there. That's a great point.
Mm-hmm.
Fast moving parts at the front, slower moving parts, larger parts, different places to store. Secure kitting area. Kitting area is a place like what I used to. I put a cage up, and my inventory was in there. The things that were kitted for the next week's work or the next day's work. I was the only one that had the key. The only reason I was the only one to have the key, because if you leave it unlocked, like I've seen a lot of people with kitting, they kit the parts for the next week or next day's work. And when the next day when they go in there to pick up the part's gone. Because why? Because the maintenance technician saw that part in there and needed it for, problem, they can go in there and get it. Well, my guys knew if you unlock that storeroom and that kitted area, if you go in there and take a part out without notifying me that night, I don't care if you got to wake me up. Because if it's something critical, I need to know that before I walk in the next morning and get shot in the head with it, So it's important to know that. But typically what I'd had a lay down area. I had certain shelves that were numbered. So on the work order, when I said this part, so when they got a scheduled job, they could look at the work order, say parts are in bin A1. They walk to bin A1. The supervisor, I was supervisor, I'd open the case, they go in and get it, walk out, and I lock it back. Only one problem I had, they were starting to climb over the cage at night to get the parts. So I had to secure the top on it too. That way they couldn't climb over. And I used an Army vault lock that they couldn't pick because they could pick the lock.
You can also get very creative in the kitting area. One of the things that we have implemented in kitting is having color coding, or if you have different symbols depending on what area in your facility or what line or whatever the case may be. We do color coding in totes and things like that. So if we are the blue group or the yellow group or whatever in our scheduler and we're working on this side of the plant, then we know all of our things that all of our kits are blue, but they also have the work order attached to it. So it's very easily,
Oh man,
yeah, it's very visible.
that makes it simple when you got the work order attached to it.
Yeah.
Come on, I mean, that's just logical, right?
Yes.
I like that. That's good. No maintenance, free stock. And the thing I'm saying that is that, free stock like fasteners. Okay. A lot of people say, yeah, it's okay. No, I want to know when a fastener's checked out. I want to know where it's going. Okay. I'm a reliability engineer. I think about that. Where the fasteners going? Do I have a failure thread or a failure pattern that's exhibiting itself in the plant, but no one's paying attention to it? Because I
Fuses
want to
are
know that.
fuses are a big one that I've seen a lot of people put in free stock.
Yeah.
And if you're having issues with fuses being blown, that's something from a reliability aspect that you're going to want to know.
Yeah, exactly. So what are the causes of problems we face? What are they? Well, lack of effective standard operating procedures, or procedures are just not followed. We may have them, but no one's following them. That's a problem. People not knowing what they don't know. Okay, lack of what is best demonstrated practice. What is best practice? And Radar, I'm sure you guys have best practice. I mean, once it's been demonstrated, all we got to do is repeat it, right?
That's correct.
And then we could become complacent with the norm. That's the problem we face, the norm. Yeah, I know. We just wait these guys out. They got this new idea about the storeroom, but we're going to wait them out, and then we'll go back doing the same old thing we always did. No, you got to put it. You got to have rigor. You got to make sure you're following it, doing it right. We're always measuring the wrong things. We measure something in the storeroom, and it doesn't make sense. It's not logical. And we have no scorecard to tell us if we're headed in the right direction. So here, the leading lag in MRO KPIs, the percentage of parts going in the lower left, percentage of parts tagged to an asset, that's assigned to an asset. Mm-hmm. Inventory turns. How many times is that part turning out of the storeroom? Percentage of parts with min, max, reorder points. Stock outs. Expedited shipping costs. I'll tell you what, when I started tracking that as a maintenance manager, I was shocked at what I found. The overnight delivery cost was costing us a lot of money. Inventory value, you got to know what that is. Total maintenance material costs and total maintenance cost. That total maintenance cost is what all this hits at the end. Any comments on that, Radar? Want to add something to it?
Yeah, I would like to add that you guys, when something small begins to happen, and let's say that we replace seals or we replace bearings on a particular asset over and over again, if you're tracking through KPIs, inventory accuracy, inventory turns, especially inventory turns, you'll start noticing the small problem become a bigger problem and a bigger issue because the root cause of the problem out on the line was not fixed. It's just been band-aid with small components. So that's one of the things that I'd really like to share with our people. If we're noticing more bearings being issued out in the course of a month, it could be installation errors, or it could be there's a bigger problem within the asset itself that's creating these bearings to fail. It could be lubrication that's failing, and we have a lubrication issue. So if people want to know about your KPIs and why you do it, because ultimately, like Ricky said, it goes to the total maintenance cost. But quite honestly, it really helps with the reliability of our equipment. It maintains the health of our equipment if we can, from a storeroom perspective, start telling people, hey guys, I'm noticing we're issuing out a lot of these 6204 bearings, and there's something going on here. So it's really important to have that in your KPIs.
Wow. Yeah, Radar, you make a good point. I've said that for years. It's amazing how we're aligned with that thinking, because, I mean, if you start tracking the parts in the store and which ones are being checked out a lot, it's trending up, you got a problem. Could be a one asset, or it could be across the whole plant.
It could be a bad PM. It could be a bad preventative
That's right.
maintenance test that was created that we continually, it spits out every month on a calendar base because we're not condition based. We don't have predictive technologies. So the PM itself could be wrong. And that's where if we look at all the areas within maintenance, and storeroom is an area within maintenance, we can get some key indicators of what's going on out there on the plant floor.
Yeah, absolutely. So what is a maintenance storeroom? MRO storeroom management concerns the overall methodology for organizing and operating the area set aside for storing parts and other necessities used for maintenance, repair, and operations. That's why it's called MRO, maintenance, repair, operation. Now, why do they call storeroom? This MRO is typically known as parts, but it's really what it stands for, is the maintenance, repair, and operation, but it's the parts and material required for it. So maintenance storeroom, secure storage area for maintenance parts, repair parts, operating supply, which are ready to use specification. Like I used to have large motor shafts. What we do, make sure they're polished, make sure they were wrapped in wax paper. They were lubricated, wax paper wrapped around them. So when we go out to put a motor on, don't have to worry about scratches on it or anything else. It's ready to go on. Just pull that cover off, clean it off, ready to go. Storage of parts or supplies for future use to avoid prolonged downtime, which leaves the plant shut down or loss of income. It's a big deal. So, what are the 7 habits of a highly effective storeroom leader? I know you're waiting on this one, Radar. Ensures all maintenance parts checked out or charged to an asset via work order. No work order, no parts. Monitors storeroom leading and lagging KPIs and make decisions based on data. Ensures the storeroom is secure and monitored 24/7. Doesn't mean you got to have someone in it 24/7. You got to get the discipline and have the information there that you can manage it remotely. And that's what you got, Radar, I'm sure.
Yes, we have RFID technology that we've put in some of our sites. So any item that is a particular monetary investment, we have RFID tags like they do at any of these big chain stores or whatever. So if you walk past a certain point within the storeroom, it automatically charges the part out, but it shows who has it as well. So it's really good because the RFID is also in the key code in everybody that has it, their little fob. So if I'm carrying out a $5,000 cylinder and I forget to check it out, it's automatically going to check it out against me. And then later on, the next day, then we can communicate, hey, Radar, you took this out of the storeroom. What work order was it to? And it's a really good piece to do.
Yeah, that's cool. I've never seen that before. Mm-hmm. Next would bring in vendors to provide free training to technicians. And I know a lot of people tell me, the salesperson doesn't know anything. You'd be surprised what salespeople know. Plus, they might bring in some goodies for your maintenance techs. But what they do, like this, is preventive maintenance and safety. Is Gates belt manual. It's one of them I'd use to train my guys with. I'm telling you, it's free, but the salesperson to bring it in and go through it with your technician. Not you have to do it. They'll do it. Now I stand there with them, but I think the advantage of the salesperson, they're outside. They coming inside, and the people see them as a resident expert. Even though you may have more knowledge than that salesperson, they still look at them as more of an expert than you. Rebuild items are shipped to rebuild facility within 48 hours. You got to have some of this information in there. And rebuild facilities that are inspected to ensure the quality of rebuilds. See that last one over to the right? It's a service center evaluation guide. These are downloaded free on the internet. So there's a lot of free stuff on the internet. And you can also go to my website, worldclassmaintenance.org, and I have a lot of this stuff on there free. And you don't have to use your email address when you sign in, when you pull something out. I hate that with websites, when you got to go put your email address in to take something out.
I just put yours in.
I use yours too. That's why you get all that stuff.
Yeah.
So what are the indicators for poor storeroom practices? Housekeeping, just one of the first indicators. How storeroom running. If the aisles are cluttered, disorganized, stocks in bins are not rotated to allow first in, first out, packages are torn, show leaks, it indicates that storage and care is not happening. I went to a plant in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm not going to mention the name of it because their vice president might be on this call today. Might be one of the guys on there. But you might see this thing later. But I went to this plant and he said, "You got to go to this plant, man. We got a lot of problems in our plant." And I said, "Okay." So first thing I go when I go to a plant looking at problems, I want to walk around with a couple of maintenance techs and the maintenance supervisor. I just got to look at everything. So I go to the storeroom and I'm looking at the storeroom. All the electric motors in there were used. None of them were rebuilt. I'm like, "Are these ready to put on?" Yeah. When we took them off, they were ready, they were running fine. How long have you been here? I don't know. A couple been here a couple of years. I'm like, oh my gosh. They had V belts hanging on long way. They weren't rolled up like they're supposed to be. Cool. I mean, I'm talking about some 10-foot V belts dropping down, hanging over just a little bar. Oh my gosh. It's amazing what you see.
Ricky, I want to speak to something very seriously. I can tell you that your storeroom is a mirror of your maintenance program, first and foremost.
Great point. You're
If
right.
you want to see, or if you really want to get a gauge and feel of how someone's maintenance program is, walk into their storeroom. To Ricky's point with the motors that you use sitting back there,
Yeah.
that lets you know that there's really some poor practices going on, and your storeroom is kind of a dump all. So if your storeroom is not operating effectively and efficiently and is clean and it's very organized, then you know for a fact without benefit. I mean, I can just tell you all the places I've been to, if their storeroom is chaotic, their
Yeah.
maintenance program's chaotic.
Yeah, absolutely. Direct correlation. Absolutely. So if you're having stockouts on recurring basis and stock is showing an but stock showing an inventory is an indication of poor inventory management. We got a lot of stockouts, really. I mean, the computer says they're in there, but they're not in there. I know they just vanish at night. Amazing. If you experience an expedite for material already on order, I mean, it's amazing. It's an indication that either the suppliers are not meeting their due dates or the buyers are not paying attention to your needs.
And the reorder points and reorder quantities, min maxes may not be set appropriately based on your maintenance program. If you're reactive, then of course your ROP and ROQ are going to be a lot different than if you're proactive.
Yeah. I tell you, a lot of times you can't get that overnight. What it costs you, like if you call a vendor and says, "Hey, I need this electric motor, 50 horsepower motor, and I need it right now." They say, "Well, I'm not sure if we got one in stock. I need it really bad. How bad do you need it?" So he's got his finger on that cash register. How much am I going to charge this guy? You need it. How bad? I need it.
How many
real
more
bad.
zeros are they going to add onto that list?
Yep. Oh yeah. Absolutely. Parts and materials not charged to a work order asset. All parts must be checked out. The storeroom and charged at an asset. Big deal. See that every place I go.
One thing I want to touch on here that I don't think we put on there is the return of parts. I have seen where someone will come and get a part for a work order, and it's returned. One of the things that I've seen in my experience, especially electronic, whether it's boards, I/O boards, or something, if they go out on the plant floor and there's any kind of magnetism, which you guys know there is out there, it's a good possibility that those boards, even though they were not installed, cannot be placed back into inventory. So be very cautious on any items coming back to inventory. And if they are, make sure you do a return to stock process back into your inventory. Just don't throw it in the drawer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that will put your counts off.
Or if you even got a large bearing you've sent out, they've taken it out of the box, taken it out of that wrapper it's in to keep it safe. So it's probably contaminated, so you may end up having to buy a new one or send it out to be checked, No kidding for schedule, or future work, Kidding is important. Talked about the staging area and all that secure. Benefits of having a clean, efficient storeroom. When the MRO storeroom is clean and runs efficient, just like you're saying, Radar, it efficiently at lower cost and your company recognizes an increase in revenue. That storeroom tells you everything about a company, everything. Find parts faster. You'll spend less time on labor wasted in looking or looking for lost or even missing parts.
And
You
it
know, this
covers a
whole
lot.
thing is a big deal.
It covers a lot of the
Or as we
TIMWOOD.
call it.
Yeah, it covers a lot of the acronym TIMWOOD, which is, you know, transportation, inventory, movement, waste, or waiting, over processing, over and then defects. When you actually have a clean, functioning storeroom, and to Ricky's point earlier, where you have your high turn items up front, you're not having to walk all the way back, that which is a waste. That's travel or transportation. So think of Timwood when you're setting up your storeroom. If and I've set up quite a few, uh, you have to think about waste, and that's what we're trying to do is eliminate the waiting. If you have a maintenance tech and they have a breakdown out on the floor that they have to take care of, if they're waiting for you to go dig through something to find it, it really hurts the bottom line. Go ahead, Ricky.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's good. Lower freight, shipping, handling costs. You start tracking those overnight delivery costs, expedited costs, it tells you got an indication you got a real problem in the store. Probably not just your store, but in the whole plant.
Well, also,
Reactive maintenance.
also, one thing is you make sure that you have a process that you do document expedited charges. I have seen it absorbed in a PO where it's one line item and someone says that this particular item is $5,000 when 4,000 of it was for the part and 1,000 was for the expedited charge, but it's only one line item and it's hidden and it's very hard to find. So make sure
You got to
you
have that
define,
separated.
you
Yeah.
make sure you define freight as a separate line item in the purchase order.
Yeah. Cause they'll stick it to you a lot of times, you know, you'll get stuck with that cost. That's a great point. I hadn't thought about that in a while. Caught me on that one, Radar. So less inventory carrying costs, you know, carrying costs is how much does it cost you to have it in the store? You know, how much does it cost to have it there? So you can shrink your inventory of parts by determining what's obsolete, unnecessary. Parts not turning. Why? Why is it not turning? Maybe it's because we don't have that machine anymore. You know, if you don't have a configuration management process, when this equipment is taken out, all those parts are supposed to go with it, not keep in the storeroom just in case we might need them for something else.
And
Not
this
the way
is
it works.
and this is where your storeroom manager or whoever is leading your storeroom needs to do an obsolescence annual review of all the parts, and that's an ongoing basis that you work with your maintenance team. And if you've noticed that we haven't had turnover or any kind of turns of a part in a length of time, and you guys can figure out what time that is. Some people use 3 years, some people use five, or whatever the case
Yeah.
may be. Make sure you do a review every year of your inventory. And Ricky, I see that a lot, that
Yeah.
people, they'll do all these good things all year long, but then they'll forget to do the year end review.
Yeah. That's a great point. Then maximize the use of available space by reorganizing, removing unnecessary part. You know, you have room to make workspace more efficient. You know, you might be able to reclaim some of that area, you know, make it for income producing. You know, you might have a big warehouse. You don't need a big warehouse. And if you could consolidate it, make it more efficient, then that warehouse space could be for production space.
We actually took one space where we eliminated some obsolescence in my past, and we turned it into a root cause analysis area where we had all the tools and magnifying just everything to do a root cause analysis for our techs. So we actually gave back some square footage to our maintenance department to do some proactive work.
Yeah, I actually took part of our the storeroom as we started getting more efficient. We added a cage area, so we were a rebuild shop. So it worked out very well. And it was close to the storeroom too, so that worked out good too.
Mm-hmm.
So how to be proactive with stores through an evaluation? The beginning of the MRO, you know, proactivities to evaluate your current storeroom. There are forms out there online that can help you evaluate your storeroom. You know, how good are you? Best way to evaluate your storeroom is to walk through it once a week and review the list of items below. Okay, this is a little simple one. You don't need to go online to get anything. This is a little simple one. Check 10 part numbers and verify CMMS versus actual. Okay. What's the variance from the CMMS and on-hand balance? I know, Radar, you guys do it at every one of your plants. I have no doubt in my mind. And order management, how many orders can be filled and meet the daily requirements? Okay. You know, review the orders produced from the day before and note the numbers of shortages. You need to track these things. They're important. Look at your kitting area. staging area? Are the kids filled daily or rotating daily and rotate, or are they lingering for a week or more? It should be typically the way it should be kitted. It should be the day prior, the night prior, a kit should be put in that area. But it depends on your organization. Okay. Like one plant I worked at, we some things they may be in there for as long as a week because it's for that next week's work. But it wasn't any more than that. Otherwise, they'd be in a storeroom, not in that kitted area. Do you notice none authorized persons in the storeroom looking at stock, shopping, or filling their own orders? What are your in and out controls? And are they working? Like the alarm I mentioned, you open the cage, wah, 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 you got to close the cage, okay? Put your card key in it. I know you're in there. I know how long you've been in it because you got to take the card key to get back out again, or your RFR readers or whatever.
This also goes with outside services and contractors. Whenever you're doing a new project or you're bringing in new lines, or it's maybe a greenfield facility and you have contractors going in and out of your storeroom doing whatever the case may be, you have to make sure that they understand the process as well. If they need something, Ricky was talking about the free issue items, let's make sure that is communicated to the storeroom person so we can track that as well.
Yeah, a lot of times contractors come in and do work, and if they don't have a part, but if by contract they're supposed to provide it, then they come to your storeroom. You're right. That's the problem. That's the problem. That's something that needs to be thought about. So what do we do? That's up to management to determine that.
Well, like I said, I'm sure no one that is on this call or watching it later on ever had a contractor or someone, use some of our parts because they needed it and hey, they were going to refurbish it, but then it never comes to fruition. So always track it.
That's right. Exactly. That's why I like cameras. Cameras work well. And then finally, ask your storeroom if they have any issues with suppliers or buyer response. If you don't ever ask them, they won't ever tell you. You get any of our buyers, any people we're buying from, and they're giving you a problem or anything?
And ask them away from leaders. Go have lunch or sit in the break room, drink a cup of coffee, just strike up a conversation and let them just let you know everything that's going on. And sometimes that intimacy in a conversation, you'll gain more than if you just come up to them on the spot and ask them what's going on.
That's a good point. I mean, a cup of coffee goes a long way, or a cup of tea, whatever you use in the morning. Hey, let's go get a cup of coffee and talk. Storeroom goals, before you dive in and start fixing things, it's better to first set some goals and priorities based on your company's immediate needs and resources.
Got to have an action plan. Got to have
a plan for sure. So some of the considerations could be the number of storerooms. You could have a lot of hidden storerooms. You don't even know you have them. Could be just a cabinet that somebody's got. And they start putting parts in. And the SKUs you have, MRO process maps. You got to have a process because MROs, whether it's ordering parts, kitting parts, whatever, you should have a process map for that.
Spaghetti maps are really good to do. If you've, whenever I go, like when I first came on with Great Lakes Cheese, I spent the first 4 months going to all the facilities and just looking at the storeroom, their processes. But one of the things I did is I timed how long it took someone to go here. But I also did a spaghetti diagram through the course of the day to see how much movement, because we were noticing they had their highly turned items way in the back, so they were wasting more time. So a spaghetti map really helps you track whenever you're doing process maps as well, Ricky.
That's a great point, because I got one. I was going to put it on this computer, but I decided not to, because I wasn't sure what the company name was. So somebody might see it. Like, that's our company. What's he showing that for?
Yeah.
So the number of the same part number in stock under different inventory numbers. And you can have the same part in 5 different places in the storeroom. It's the same part. Why don't we have it in one place instead of in 5 places? What happens like that over time?
And this happens for some of you whenever an OEM, an original equipment manufacturer, sells you their recommended spare parts list. A lot of times they tag their these parts with their own part number,
Yeah.
which you don't know what the actual part is. It will say bearing, and then it will have their part number because they
Oh
won't give you
man.
the manufacturer's part number. So you end up purchasing it, but sometimes people are creating their internal part numbers before they even see the part. And when it comes in, you go, man, I had this already under this particular part number. But what I have seen in my past is people just creating part numbers without actually seeing the true manufacturer's part number. So be very careful with OEM part numbers when you're putting them in the system.
That's a great point. Could a 6102 bearing is a 6102 bearing, not a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever.
Yes.
You know, production and maintenance schedules. You know, we got to take that into consideration. The activity level of each shift. Some shifts may have more parts turned in than others. Maybe they have a storeroom attendant in there. I don't necessarily like storeroom attendants in there all the time anymore. When we've got video cameras, we've got, card readers and so on. We don't need that. Number of personnel you can devote to the project. So if we're going to change the way our storeroom is managed, then we may have to devote, people to it. Also, to see progress, you'll need some kind of baseline information. That's why I recommend you bring somebody in to do the evaluation, or do it yourself with an evaluation sheet saying this is where we are. 3 months from now, we measure ourselves again. 3 months from now, we measure ourselves again and see how we're doing. If you don't measure against yourself, you won't ever know if you're getting better. The condition of spare parts and material, it's a big deal. Are they used or not? Are they the right parts? And make sure
and electronics, are they in anti-static bags? How are your bearings stored? Ricky brought up bearing coming out of the package. And I have pictures. Do you go into your bearing drawer and you see some that are just laying there where dust and particles? So it's very important, the condition of your spare parts. We talked about rotating your motors, the shafts on your motors. It's very, very important for FIFO and the condition of your parts to maintain them properly, not having your belts hanging under lights or where they can be exposed to detrimental effects. That's why it's so important. And why buy all these parts, Ricky, if we're just going to let them ruin up there in the storeroom? And then when our maintenance technicians go to put them on the machine, we have premature failure out there, and then before you know it, we're it's just a really bad thing.
What's the problem? We got a problem with our PM, or what's the problem is? It might be a problem with our parts.
We just put a motor, we put a motor that was in the storeroom for a year out on the floor, and it's never been tested since it was bought in and received. No one actually did a quality check on the motor. It's been on the shelf bad for a year that we have cycle counted and everything. It finally gets issued out to a work order, but then when it goes out there, it doesn't run, and you just wasted all that time and money. And that's where expediting parts come in play. It's just a bad practice. So you have
That's why I like to track expedited costs in a different line item. How much money we spend on expedited costs. That's a big deal. Make sure you capture the current state of the storeroom. So if we're going to make some transition, take some photos, report data, whatever, and then set a baseline. And then 6 months from now, go back and do the same evaluation again. Take the same pictures again and see if it looks different. And it will if you do this. And if possible, have your MRO baseline evaluated. This makes it easier on how far you come. Are we moving forward, or are we standing still? Just like I used to tell people, how do you know if your storeroom is moving forward? Spray a little bit of paint. Don't do this, okay? But yellow paint around your storeroom manager's feet and see if he's moving or not. So some storeroom requirements: store only parts which are linked to an asset. An exception: operating supplies are free stock. Promote physical security for your part. Treat them as if you would your checkbook or your debit card. Okay. Staff and control your storeroom at the same hours of production operates. Many companies, they don't do that. That means somebody's going to go in and get free stock. Nothing wrong if you got security weight, car key readers, cameras and on, that's fine. Ensure that each part number is assigned a min, max, reorder point, and reviewed regularly. Measure your storeroom performance. And I think the metrics are a big deal for that. Stock out. Number of times someone enters the storeroom, does not check out a part. Whoa. I mean, people actually go in the storeroom, don't check out a part.
Mm-hmm.
We can do that. We can identify that. Storeroom value. How much money's in the value? Because the value does what? Radar keeps going up, doesn't it?
It does. And 20%, you look at 20% carrying cost across your inventory.
Wow, 20%. That's a lot.
Yeah,
That's a lot.
that's about industry standard. 20%
Yep,
is what it costs.
I agree. I've heard that before. Inventory turns by part and component type. Need to know how many times they're turning. And then measure MTBF. This is a Ricky Smith thing, okay? Mean time between failure of critical components by type and size. People say, well, our work order system doesn't work very well. What does this storeroom system work well? Yeah, it works very well. Then just when they check it out, that's a mean time between failure when they check out the next one. It's not complicated. Not complicated. So just the metrics. This is a SMRP metrics, vendor managed inventory. So this is a metric is a ratio to number of stocked items measured as an inventory, as individual stock keeping items, the SKUs that are managed by a vendor or supplier, but to the total number of stocked items held in inventory. Objective, is to quantify the amount of maintenance, repair, operating stock that vendors managed. You need to know that. Inactive stock that's not moving. Okay, sorry, my dog's barking. Thought I had him fed good, but he's got to give me a little noise now. So inactive stock, the metric calculates the ratio of inactive, MRO, inventory stock records to the total number of MRO stock records, including critical spares and non-value records. I mean, the whole thing about this is, is that, we want to measure the percentage of non-critical MRO supply stock with no usage for 12 or more months. Now, what would that tell you? Could tell you a lot of things, right? If it's not turning, maybe we don't have the equipment anymore, or maybe we're buying it from somewhere else. There's something going on there.
And conversely, if you have a high turnover, it could tell you something on the other side of the pendulum.
That's right. Exactly. Secondary objective, use the information to calculate the potential for reduction in working capital through changing the stocking level. Got to know what it is. Inactive stock, if it's not turning, maybe you don't need it in a storeroom because you're going to pay carrying costs on it. You're going to pay, insurance on it. You're going to pay, taxes on it. So just the material management, another metrics, stock outs. It's pretty simple, right? It says it in the CMMS, the part's there and you go in, it's not there. Okay. We need to make sure we measure stock outs. It's a big deal. ABC analysis of parts. Right? You do this with your parts, I'm sure, Radar, right?
Absolutely. It's very critical that you do A, B, and C but I'll let you do the definitions on these.
Yeah, so A is just, it's about 15 to 20% of overall inventory, but it represents 80% of the value of the inventory. That's a big deal. So having these ABC analysis determines how often you could probably going to be checking those parts or how secure you keep them. B items represents 30 to 35% inventory item and about 15% of the value. So these are generally be managed through period inventory, should be managed in a formal inventory system. Here it is. C inventory represents 50% of the actual items. So it's a lot of items, but only 5% of the inventory value. So most organizations can afford a relatively relaxed inventory process around these items. So you know what you got to keep tight and things you can get a little bit loose on. Mm-hmm. Requirements, for success, secure storeroom 24/7. All parts charged to a work order, which are assigned to a specific asset. No remote stores that is not controlled. No hidden spares, the legal tax issue there. Preferred barcode scanner, scan part, scan work order, download information into the CMMS. First in, first out. Now, Radar, you use first in and first out, I'm sure, right?
We do date coding just like you do in restaurants or anything. So if you have something comes in, it gets a date code. We actually have little stickers with the date. That way you can track what's in, what's out.
Great point. No used parts unless they've been restored or rebuilt to specification. And then parts for scheduled maintenance work orders are kept in a secure, that's what most people don't do, kept in a secure location other than the storeroom with a work order copy attached to those parts. That way when that outage day comes or that scheduled work, maintenance person come in, a contractor then come in and say, Work order matches work order on that pallet. Take it, let's go. Emergency work order obtainment, so we get an emergency work order created, asset number, technician scopes the job, parts required, it's a reactive, okay? So yes, look on the bill of materials, parts are in the CMMS, parts charged to an asset, pick up parts of the storeroom, return job site, work completed, work order closed, CMMS metrics updated. Makes it real simple. That's not where we want to go. We want proactive maintenance, parts attainment. Work ID. This is the things that come from PM, PDM, and operator care, things they find. Work orders created by the maintenance planner, the job scope, the job's plan, parts ordered, reserved, in a secure area. I was talking about the kitted area. Job scheduled, work executed specification, work completed a specification, work order complete, work orders closed out. We got good data in our system this way. Very simple. 6 S's for storeroom: sort, set, and order, shine, standardize, sustain, and now we have security. For a long time, it was the 5 S's. You want to say something on that, Radar?
Actually, I'm trying to get 7 S's because of skills need to be part of this.
That's a good one. Yeah,
so skills, we'll talk about that later. Yeah, and I'm really happy that they finally included security as part of the program.
I like that. Yeah, so sort, remove parts that are no longer used. The machine's been gone for 3 years. Why do we still have the parts here? And then straighten, organize. Don't ask me to give you the Japanese terms, okay? Sort and store parts based on ABC analysis. Scrub, keep all parts, storeroom clean, climate controlled on certain items. Standardize routine to sort, straighten, and scrub. Eliminate redundant parts. You may have the same part in 5 different locations. You don't even need it in one if you got a centralized storeroom. And if you got good planning and scheduling. Fast turn parts in the front, part types stored in the same area, and buy from qualified vendors, not lowest bidder. That lowest bidder kills companies. Sustain, expand the process to other areas, store parts in secure areas with new ideas. And then security, control access. Cameras, secure access via employee card, whatever. I like to have alarms on doors, okay? You notice that with me. That way if you walk in, you don't leave it open and vagrants come in and you pick up something. So you probably never seen the maintenance gimbal walk, okay? This is a new one probably for you, okay? The maintenance gimbal walk's an opportunity in the storeroom, especially for the maintenance staff to stand back for day-to-day tasks to walk through. So I'd write a work order saying you're going to go on a gimbal walk today. I get my knucklehead guy and my smart guy and a couple other ones, and we're going to put them together. And we're going to walk through the storeroom facility to identify wasteful activity. Stand back and watch. Some examples: maintenance leadership once a month, a quarter with a storeroom manager, maintenance planner to identify problems in the storeroom, lack of security in the storeroom, used parts in places where new parts should be, rebuild items not sent out for rebuild, like you were talking about earlier, Radar. Mm-hmm. And then once a quarter, maintenance leadership with just production leadership, or once a year, maybe even with a plant manager, to identify problems with production and maintenance practices. So production personnel not operating the equipment specification. Why do we want to do that? Because it impacts parts. Go out and do a gimbal walk with management and look at how things are operating in the plant because it impacts the storeroom. And vice versa, the storeroom impacts maintenance. Next steps. A buddy of mine a long time ago made this statement that if a step in a process is skipped, the performance substandard level to create defects known as failure. So if we're going to have a process, we can't skip a step. We got to follow. So here, next steps: educate everyone in maintenance material, best practices and processes. Agree on a master plan with quick wins. A master plan to change your storeroom from where it is to where it needs to be. And then if you don't have quick wins first when you start it, people are going to get bored and the project will die. Mm-hmm. And then you got to have targets and goals. Create a RACI chart, align with the MRO process map. Establish leading and lagging metrics. Mentioned that earlier. Okay. Leading KPIs lead the results, lagging KPIs are the results. All right. Questions? Oh, at the bottom of this, next week, got to tell you, Radar, you may want to push this on to some of your plants, man. I got preventive maintenance best practices, going to be on Zoom. You're going to hear what upkeep. Any of them want to come, just have to let me know. It's going to be live at Southern Wesleyan University, but everybody, the people from all over the world are going to be on this program. So it's 3 days. So if you're interested, just ask me and I'll send you a brochure.
Okay.
All right. So what are the questions, people in the audience?
Let's see. What temperature range is advisable for storage of spare parts and equipment? The way I like to look at it, instead of doing Celsius and Fahrenheit, if you're comfortable, the parts are comfortable. If you're cold, the parts are cold. If you're hot, the parts are hot. And the reason why I say that is if you have rubber that gets too hot and elastic, if you get too cold, your parts, I'm saying. So ambient temperatures from 40 to, I would say, no more than 100 degrees, and even that's a little too high. I would stay within, if you're comfortable, your parts are comfortable.
Yeah.
Ricky, would you agree with that?
Yep, 100%. All right. Who else?
Caitlin, did you get any other questions? I'm not seeing any.
Hello, it's Heather. So I have subbed in for Caitlin, and I was late to the game, so my chat is empty. But if you have any other ones, then you're up to date.
I don't. Ricky,
Awesome.
thank you so much. If anyone needs to communicate with Ricky or myself, here are our emails, or you can communicate through via Upkeep or in our maintenance community that a lot of us are in. That's about all. We'll be glad to answer any questions that you guys have if you think after this broadcast.
Yes, thank you so much, Radar. Thank you, Ricky. We super appreciate you guys hosting this webinar. Like Radar mentioned, please join the maintenance community if you have not already. We have tons of great events coming up in the next few weeks and beyond. So we would love for you to be able to see all of those ahead of time, as well as replays of all of our webinars after the fact. So this one will be going up live probably tomorrow morning since it's getting later in the day here. But we really appreciate all of the live attendance, and to those of you watching in the recording, we appreciate you as well.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
you
all
all so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.